Here.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Here.
Mr. Corey?
Here.
Mr. Martins?
Here.
Mayor Claire?
Here. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting and may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present. Good. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. And if we could have a salute to the flag, please.
Flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no one signed up for public input tonight. And we do not have any recognition awards, so we'll go right into the superintendent report. Superintendent?
Sure. So I've provided for the committee tonight at the desk an update on all of the summer construction projects, our capital improvement projects. And first and foremost, we need to say that Ken Pacheco and his maintenance and operations crew have done a great job of managing many projects simultaneously. So in this document that I provided you today, articulates where we are, what the anticipated completion date is for the following projects. So Tansy, that's an MSBA accelerated repair program. If you've driven by, you've seen how we're putting the new windows in. There's temporary windows in place now. Yes, they're smaller, but again, those are temporary while we get the right size windows. There was abatements done, painting, and ADA compliance, all in progress. The new security cameras have been installed and are complete, but that project will be ongoing into the start of the school year, and then we anticipated being done by December. At Watson is also an MSBA accelerated repair program, and that project has begun with the original or the initial work, but it will not begin in earnest until after the new year. So we'll see how they transition from Tansy then over to Watson. At Green, we have new carpets in place. We have resurfacing of the gym floor and new security cameras. At Doran, we're painting throughout the building. We did a new sidewalk out front with ramps and railings, which is in progress, and also new security cameras. Henry Lord, we have a lot of work going on, consolidating the receiving areas of the school to create more classrooms and additional classroom space, new security cameras. We're also putting a new floor in the cafeteria and new painting work. And we've also begun the schematic work for the egress at the building. At Fonseca, we have painting in place, and then we're going to be looking at how we can design a new security checkpoint at the entrance, and also installing new security cameras. At Durfee, we've relocated classrooms from the CTE wing to make up space for the new PACE Center, which will open, I believe, in October. We have new painting going on, plus all the construction outside, plus we've installed new security cameras. At RPA, we've made upgrades to lighting. We've moved some classrooms around. We've replaced the backboards in the basketball backboards in the gym, and we are in the pipeline for next phase of MSBA accelerated repair. At Talbot, we've done a ton of work this summer. We've got a brand new gym floor. We've painted the entire gym. We have new bleachers going up. We have an exterior basketball court in progress. We're putting new epoxy floors in the main hall area, and we have a new floor in the cafeteria in progress, and new security cameras, and we'll be working on the individual classroom door machinery. At Sylvia, we also have the schematic work in progress for the egress and new security cameras. At Stone, we've begun the engineering to build a retaining wall on June Street to counter the wall that's there that has runoff issues. We're also painting the old former chalkboards with whiteboard paint, new security system, and then they're also in the pipeline for the MSBA repair program, and we're putting a basketball hoop on the back side of the building in the play area, which is in progress. At Cuss, we've replaced security cameras, and we've also replaced the, or will replace the carpet in this building. So you can see this carpet will be replaced. Spencer Borden, we're repairing the sunken area in the parking lot, which is on the Durfee side of the parking lot. We've already dug it out, filled it with stone, put a first coat of tar down and asphalt, and we'll be putting the next batch down shortly. We're also filled in the seals and the cracks, and we're also replacing carpets and doing security cameras. Laterno security cameras and new carpets, Bavaris security cameras, Morton security cameras, and finally the Pace Center, which will be in the former CTE area at the Nagel. That will be the new parent engagement center. We'll be moving in October, so Suffolk can have that and work on the wellness area in the gym. But we've done a ton of work there with building with the build out, with the plumbing, the HVAC, the storefront electronic doors, ceilings, lighting, et cetera, and we will have that done, and we'll move and have a grand opening in October, and it has a separate entrance, and it's gonna be awesome. So with that, I can tell you, we've done a ton of stuff this summer. This is very important to us that we continue to work on improving the infrastructure within the system, and with your input in the special meeting earlier, we'll establish this as an ongoing goal for the year.
Question on the, Mr. Aguirre.
Just, there's a ton of work, I agree with you, that's gone on. Quick question on, if we have our own personnel doing the work, are they getting paid overtime when there's extra hours?
So if there is overtime, we pay overtime with our own people, yes.
So anybody that's done hours beyond whatever the normal work week is, there's overtime across the board for doing installations, doing all this
Yeah,
stuff
if
to
it's
get
our
it done?
workers and we're working overtime, yes.
And how about when there's, and I don't know the case, if there's salary people that are doing more, is that taken into consideration when we're doing this much work? So,
Salaried,
I don't, if there's any salary employees that typically, like if you work, let's say 45 hours a week, but because of the nature of all this work in a condensed time, is anyone being told like they don't get overtime but a worker would because they're a principal or because they're a salaried department head or any of those?
yeah, so individual service contract administrators don't get overtime.
How about if they're doing a whole slew of extra work to get these done?
They're not doing the construction. They're not doing what's listed here.
Yeah, I'm just, I can speak for myself. The fact that we got all these projects going in such a short window, if we have, whatever you call them, individual contract people that are on salary, if they're doing hours and hours and hours above and beyond, I think they should get paid overtime.
Would you say the same for the superintendent?
No,
What are you saying?
because your hours are not as great as those.
Oh, really?
Just my opinion. But no,
Well,
I would
you know
think
what they
that,
say about that. No,
I think maybe that's something to look at to see if there has been people. You know, we are fortunate right now that we have budget funds and the like, that if there are people that are doing way beyond what a normal call of duty would be for, you know, a salaried employee that's on, you know, working as a without overtime. I think there might be some cases, if you look into it, if you can, get it back to us. If it's not, it's not. But I do think that people are busting their rear ends to get these schools open, and if they're working a tremendous amount, giving them some overtime, I think would be appropriate.
So just two things. One, I know that at the last meeting, we referred the principal salaries and stuff to the subcommittee, which that's something that we're going to look at this fall, and that's definitely something that we can put on the table. Two, I do pay overtime for like HR employees during the hiring crunch when we're working past the 8-hour days that we're doing, and some of our maintenance and custodial staff. Other folks, again, is something to think about, and I'll look into something and get you guys something in my Friday email.
Thank you. I yield.
Mr. Coogan?
I just got one question. The plan for Watson was a proposal, but I didn't see what we had talked about with the gym in there anywhere. I mean, that's got to be, I know you said an outdoor recreation area for the kids
Yeah.
and some work with the gym,
Well,
but there was nothing listed.
So what I'm hoping for is that with some of the additional funding that we have unallocated, that when the committee deliberates how to expend that, perhaps Watson can be a place in that regard where we can do some upgrades in the physical wellness space.
Okay, thank you.
So we've looked at that. We don't have much in terms of proposals of the committee, but that's something that I hope that the committee entertains.
Mr. Pacheco, could you just come to the microphone for a second? Thank you. This is great work. A lot of projects going on here. So,
Thank you.
as you say in your letter here, millions of dollars worth of renovations. Can you tell us why this deferred maintenance, as you say, we have also decided that some of our deferred maintenance can no longer be ignored?
So
Why?
over the years,
Yeah.
it seems that obviously financially, everything gets deferred. So there's a lot of maintenance within the buildings that gets deferred, and it's basically nobody's fault except that with the regular funding, there's just not enough money. We've been lucky enough to have some extra dollars. The superintendent has put aside $100,000 for maintenance, preventive maintenance, so a lot of that work is happening, and it's making a difference. So we're catching things before it turns into a major repair.
And previously, that wasn't being done.
It was being done as well as they could, so it's not a slight on what we were doing, it's just we weren't doing enough.
No, that's not what I'm getting at here. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the entire committee and everybody here can agree, unless somebody feels differently, can speak up, but it really comes down to the money. The incredible amount of money that we have now lends the ability to
Yes.
do millions, as you say here, millions of dollars worth of major renovations as well as small ones.
And we're fortunate enough to have MSBA partnering for
Many of
high
those,
school.
yep.
Right, at the high school,
Tansy,
167 million, but Tansy
Watson,
and all
yep.
of those others, well over $20 million.
Okay. I mean, in your time, you haven't seen this many projects happen at one time in the school
Not even
department?
close, no.
Not even on the city side, probably, huh?
No.
Okay, all right, thank
No.
you. Other questions? No? Superintendent, anything else?
Sure. The next item under the superintendent's report is the Durfee project. As you know, steel has begun going up. We've actually already put up the steel 3 floors on one section of the building. The building is essentially broken down into 8 or 9 build-out sections, and one section now is completed. The steel, we've moved down to the front section that will come down along Ellsbury and wrap around that front courtyard area. This past week, the scoreboard was moved to the opposite side of the football field. We fenced off the football field, access from the locker rooms, and I believe Friday this week, the clock tower is going to be put up. And that's going to serve as a new focal point, the entry, the gateway into the football field. And the ticket booth on the Weedemo side will be underneath it. It's going to be really cool looking to see that beacon, if you will, in the gym area right now. The pool is now involved in the heavy demo, so we're pulling the entire pool out right now. We've tweeted out some photos the past couple of weeks that folks can see. The temporary locker rooms have built. We're cleaning field house out right now is getting its final cleaning, and then all new access rerouting for the opening of school, but also with also the construction at the Pace Center in the backfield areas with the retaining walls and the water infiltration, all that's going on right now. It's a really exciting time. And if any members of the school committee, I know I went out with Mr. Aguirre, I went out with Mr. Costa, and I've been with Mr. Corey and Mr. Coogan, I know. Anyone that has time and wants to go on a tour, just let me know, and we'll get it down there, get the hard hat on, and get out there. But it's really, we've come out of the ground on budget. There'll be some discussion points with the building committee coming up at the next meeting regarding the exterior of the field house. But everything so far has been good. We've been very happy with the construction managers who are Suffolk Construction, our designer, which is Left Field, and the owner's project manager, which is Left Field, is the owner's project manager. The architect is AI3. It's been outstanding. So we're in a good place. We look forward to, we love the comments that people are saying when they drive by and they say, oh my God, look how big and beautiful this thing is, and it's going to be awesome. So that's going on, and we'll be managing that for the next several years. At the same time, we're managing our hiring. We're in a really good place for our hire. We've made all of our administrative hires. We've essentially hired almost every single one of our teacher openings. We have a couple para openings that we're still hiring, but we'll be done and ready to open on the first day. And the first day, the annual convocation will be at 8 a.m. on the 27th of August, which is next Tuesday. My summer letter is being revised right now, and will go out soon. I invite everyone from the committee to come to the convocation if they can. We hope to have everyone back out to their buildings by 10 a.m. as usual, but we got a great show, a great presentation planned for that day. And then, of course, the first day for students is Wednesday, August 28th. It's a full day of school. We want to see, make sure that parents and students, everyone knows and is aware, school starts Wednesday the 28th. We need you there. And we look forward to welcome everyone. We got our annual High Five event. We got over 200 community partners, volunteers participating in the High Fives. Last year was outstanding. If you can find the time to get there on the 28th, I encourage you to please let me know what school you want to go to. We'll put you down and get you there for greeting all our students and letting them know how awesome they are and how great this school year is going to be. With that, my birthday is coming up this Thursday. I'll be 1 year short of 50. And I'm really excited about being 49.
It wasn't on the agenda.
It's okay.
Mr. Aguirre.
I wish I was 49.
Yeah.
So on the Durfee, you mentioned about putting the tower up and the reorganization of where the football field is. And what about the parking? Is the parking sufficient? I've seen and heard some criticisms of people getting tickets on Weedamo Street. There's not enough parking. People are like sort of going into the neighborhood. Are we prepared for?
Yeah, so people just
Soccer,
have to follow
football?
directions. I mean, that's what we're working towards. I mean, tickets come when people aren't following directions. So there's staff parking both in front of Durfee and on the Weedamo side, and then we're expecting everyone else to park on the West Main and the big lot by the Nagel Auditorium.
I was just meaning for events, not for the
Well,
school day.
so, I mean, that's,
You have a football game and we have
yeah.
200 people show up. Is there enough parking?
There will be, yes, but they have to follow directions. We're going to go on a communication campaign about where people can park. We got stories of people coming in areas they shouldn't be in, and you know, signage, people not reading the signage and those kinds of things. But we do have enough space, so we're going to have a ton of space. It's just a question of how far can you.
No, I just
can
want to
you
make sure
walk?
it's on your radar that, you know,
Yeah.
we encourage people to go to the events, then we want them to be able to park somewhere and not either get a ticket or just be in somebody's yard or whatever. Just as long as you're on it, I think that's
Right.
an issue. Thank you, I yield.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent. There is no student comment or delegate report this evening. Next, we have the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion?
Motion to approve the minutes has been made.
Second.
Is there a second? Yes. Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mayor Correa?
Yes. We have a number of donations for tonight. We have a motion to accept all donations.
So moved.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Seconded. Roll call.
Yes.
Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mayor Correa?
Yes. Superintendent, can you please read the donations?
Sure. Project Lead the Way to Durham Community School, $6,000. From Project Lead the Way to Fonseca Elementary School, $2,000. From Bay Coast Bank to the Fall River Public Schools, $500 for opening day festivities. NORC at the University of Chicago to the Special Education Department, $60. Pell Industries to Durfee High School, $53.24. Ohio Pile Prince Incorporated, Durfee High School for $12.88. And then from Good Sports, Inc. to Fonseca Elementary School, various sports equipment and apparel to be used in their athletic phys ed program. We thank our philanthropic supporters for their kindness.
Thank you. We have a number of contracts for approval this evening. Are there those that want to be separated? If so, please let the chair know by name of contract or vendor. If not, if there's a motion to accept all contracts,
So moved.
there's a motion to accept all contracts. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mayor Correa?
Yes. We have a number of grants for approval this evening. If there is a grant that you'd like separated, please let the chair know which grant name.
Hold on two of them.
Which
First
ones?
two.
The first two, Fonseca and Talbot.
Fonseca and Talbot.
Okay, is there a motion to approve all of the grants?
So moved.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second. Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mayor Correa?
Yes. Mr. Martins, you have the floor on Fonseca and Talbot redesign.
Oh, there we go.
On the Talbot redesign grant, in there, as I review this, I notice that there is no additional assistance for support paras, their teacher aides, for no additional assistance needed in classrooms. Is that factual?
Not funded out of the grant, Mr. Martins, but we've added, I think, 3 or 4 paras to Talbot this year.
Well, when I look at that on Talbot, hang on a minute. On Talbot, which was put out a little while ago, where the fiscal year 2020 for all the various schools, and I look at Talbot, and I don't see any paras listed here. And I'm wondering why.
I don't know what you're looking at, Mr. Martins, but if you want to, let me see it, I can respond in writing to you if you want, or, but we've...
I'll bring it over to you.
I'll get it.
Oops, okay. Talbot, Paras. That's a self-contained, wait a minute. Self-contained, 4, but what about in the regular classrooms? Doesn't seem to be any.
5,
Para ESL,
yeah, there's a classroom paras. And then
okay.
there's a couple more, but I know we sent out on Friday's email an updated sheet of all the support positions that are in each school. I sent you guys that on Friday.
Yeah. But the issue is involving paras. not only on the, and by the way, this Talbot redesign is a 3-year program, 3-year grant?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mons.
Okay. And the, can I go between a Fonseca and a Talbot? Is that permissible?
Yes.
Okay. On the Fonseca one, which is the next one, sorry. Where is Fonseca?
Yep.
Okay, Fonseca. There is one question, that's a 1-year grant?
Well, there's only 1 year left. They're in the final year of their turnaround plan.
All right. Of which case, project coordinator, $83,056. And when I look at page 5 of that position is not indicated as, it's a 1 FTE, but the box for Mass Teachers Retirement System is not checked. But that's only a minor thing. However, when you go to page 9, it is checked for MTRS in there. But the question that I have is, Fonseca has a principal, a vice principal. What is the function of this, the supervisor, a project coordinator, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, the project coordinator at $83,000, what is that supposed to do? And is that individual going to be evaluating teachers?
It's the student support coordinator, Mr. Martins.
It's the student coordinator?
Student support coordinator. Through this grant, we, 3 years ago,
Yeah.
we got a student support coordinator.
Okay, I'm sorry, it says project coordinator.
The page you're looking at, page 9, says, it's a summary. It says administrative salaries. On page 5 is the description of the position. It says student support coordinator. That's the position.
Does it, unless I missed it, I don't see it considered as a, stated as a student support. It says here project coordinator, and I guess that's what it's timed. It's termed as a student support.
Right.
In there, but this position does not act as another vice principal
No, sir.
or principal, because
Nope.
there's already one there.
Correct.
And this position is only going to be dealing with the students
Yes.
involved. I'm not exactly sure what the coordination is going to be done as far as the students are concerned, but if this is the final year of a 3-year contract, I mean, grant?
It is.
Mr. Martins, we have a student support center at Fonseca, given the high level of needs of social emotional learning and trauma and counseling support, and that this person coordinates all those activities in the building. It's been very successful as part of our turnaround plan.
Okay, but when you go back to where it says there's some student support staff. There's 2 of them there. That's on page 9. And for $43,027, that's in addition to the administrative salary for the project coordinator.
Yep. We have 3 positions on the grant.
Okay, I just hope that with all of this money, via the budget, via the grants, via the turnarounds in there, that indeed there is actual improvement in student learning for this. An awful lot of money, but when I look at Fonseca, in the last report from DESE, the 4th percentile, Talbot, 1st percentile.
Yep, those are the years they went into turnaround category, Mr. Martins.
Yeah, I agree. And all of, but since then, I'm hoping to see that there's going to be some improvement in it, because it's quite a bit of money.
Yep, it's state money, well, it's actually federal money that comes through the state to the schools, and each year they have to write a proposal and then defend it to a committee, and then they're awarded the grant. As Mr. Aguirre asked earlier, I'll be sending the reports of the monitor site visits to the committee members, and you'll see firsthand when you read those reports, progress that's being made in those schools.
Okay, I agree, but whether it's federal dollars or whether it's state dollars, guess what? It's coming out of my pocket, your pocket, and everybody else's pocket.
That's right, the beauty of taxes.
Absolutely so, of which case, what I want to see is, there is turnaround responsive to the amount of money that is expended, no matter where the money comes from.
Yep. As soon as we get the year off the ground, Mr. Martins, I want you to come visit Fonseca with me, and you'll see firsthand for yourself, and we'll look at some data, and I think you'll be happy with the progress that's been made.
Well, that's good, because of the fact that later on in tonight's meeting, when we start to discuss that $1 million that you're seeking committee input on, I'll be addressing that issue. But with that, I yield for those 2 grants. And I move that they be approved.
Motion's been made to approve. Is there a second?
Second with the question.
Second with a question, Mr. Aguirre?
So I do see all of the detail of these grants for the positions that Mr. Almeida was discussing. Where I do think that we need to get some further information, or just be cognizant of it in the future, is whatever schools we have in turnaround or any variation of a turnaround plan, every single plan that the superintendent's going to give us in the Friday memo or as soon as he can, every single one of those indicates additional positions, resources, and dollars. When we have those paid for by state and federal grants, if we're lucky enough to get off of those and we needed $400,000 at Fonseca in order to help raise the scores and improve the school, we have to be ready to pay that $400,000 when those grants end up leaving. That is my concern when we look at what all of these grants are, because those are positions that are in the budget. We can't all of a sudden forget about them. But we also have schools that are not necessarily getting this grant, that are in turnaround, maybe the first step of turnaround, that they don't get these $400,000. So we need to look at, when we do have extra money, to say, how can we support those schools to not get those into this category, is my, comment to the committee. So I do approve these, that's fine. I just think we need to look at the big picture of where we're going to be if these grants dry up. We are going to need to spend a lot of money to keep these positions and employees working. With that, I yield.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mayor Correa?
Yes. Next up is discussion item number 1, discuss and vote to approve the superintendent's FY20 additional full-time employee FTE investment with Chapter 70 funds. Superintendent?
So, thanks to the good work of the school committee, the city administration, the city council, and the local delegation, and the advocacy of the FREA and the MTA, there was movement made on the Hill in regards to this year's FY20 Chapter 70 budget. They've made some of the weighting increments recommended in the Foundation Budget Review Commission. As a result of that, we've been appropriated an additional amount of money in Chapter 70, which gets us, as you remember, the budget that you voted was $1.59 million more than the budget that the City Council adopted. So we've been able, with that money that's been allotted to us now in Chapter 70, that not only did we get the $1.59 million that we needed to fund the budget that the school committee adopted, but there's also additional $921,000 on top of that, which is Chapter 70 money. And I'm going to be real clear, this isn't one-time money. This is Chapter 70 money now baked into the formula. That money I've come forward with tonight with a spending plan recommendation to the committee to invest in some critical positions, to get at what Mr. Aguirre, some of those positions are to really target some of the programming in the turnaround schools to ensure that they have additional capacity and resources, but also some program investment in areas like classroom supplies for teachers, more Chromebooks, more curriculum materials, and to support the extended day program at Doran. So by understanding that, well, there's $921,000, on top of that, we're expecting another $1 million, or we already have it. We have another $1 million unexpended from insurance funds. On top of that, we can anticipate this fall, when the state rectifies the Chapter 70, there may be another couple $100,000 that the city would owe us to get us to 100% on a transportation line item. So having said that, this committee has roughly slightly north of $1 million to deliberate and figure out its best use to expend. And I know there's already been some ideas that have been discussed, such as what Mr. Coogan mentioned tonight around the physical gym wellness area at Watson. I think there's some other needs that we could look at in terms of capital projects that if the committee wanted to take a vote to count that towards Chapter 70, they could, but that's up to the committee. And then any other needs that we have as the year goes on. Continued class size reduction, more paras, as Mr. Martins loves. Pretty much the sky's the limit. And I hope that the committee understands that that money is set aside and it can only be spent at your discretion, at your will. Having said that, I've brought forward $921,000 of new positions and new program supports to invest in the district that we feel strongly about will allow us what we need to move forward. If you can look at where the additions are, they're in high-need areas. The Stone School, 10th grade academy at Durfee, which is a turnaround school, Talbot, which is a turnaround school, Morton, which is a turnaround school, Henry Lord, which is a turnaround school, and we also have investments in ESL at Green, data technician, and addition of another district-wide attendance officer. I really want to make a point that attendance in this district, we really want to target it. You gave me another position in the FY20 budget. I'm asking for another to really help us target student attendance. So with that, these are the positions that I'm requesting based on the feedback of my executive team. I've involved many other people in these conversations, and these, I think, are the critical areas that I'm requesting that we support. So with that, I turn it over for questions, but these are the positions that I'm requesting of the committee.
Mr. Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. It's really good to have this money baked into the formula. I think overall, I listened to these reports and I see that this is a school committee on the move. There's been a lot of growth and improvement as far as I could see system-wide. We're looking at a lot of really hardline improvements, and I want to commend the work of the administration and, of course, all of our teachers and of this school committee. I see that with this extra money, one of my big questions, along with Mr. Coogan and Mr. Martin, is I'm really focused on trying to develop paraprofessional trainings and growth and development, and I really loved the idea that Mr. Coogan brought up earlier about partnering with BCC and developing a baked-in system where we could develop paraprofessionals into teachers. I really hope that some of this extra money goes somewhat in that direction so that we can continue to grow the level and the standard of the paraprofessionals in our district due to the increasing instructional and academic needs of the students in our classrooms. And I know that our teachers would look forward to all the help that they could get in that endeavor. Also, another question I have, and I'm really very supportive of the extra help that you want at the Stone School with the new position. I look at the growth of the Stone School experiment from a few years back, and I see that it's been very successful in its slow development and growth to this point. Previous to the growth of this, the program we had at now at the Westall building with the Stone School, we used to rely heavily on out-of-district cost when we sent a student out for special needs and services. Is there any cost analysis that the administration can provide to us as what it's looked like over the past year or two as to how much money we're saving with the in-district services?
Yes, we can take a first stab at providing that to the committee in a weekly memo, but it's also as part of the school committee strategic goals when I get a very in-depth analysis of our own special education for the committee through the year, also in conjunction with the subcommittee.
I think that the more we work to improve our in-district work, that maybe it helps to also be an economic generator for our school system with outside programs, buying into our special needs. And I think it's just a good thing to continue to look at and to continue to grow and develop. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Exler?
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Superintendent, are you looking tonight for us to come up with recommendations for the additional monies?
No, what I would suggest, though, what I'd request of the committee is that perhaps it would be fruitful for the committee to throw out some ideas, and I can start recording them for deliberation in the September meeting.
Right. So I mentioned a few of them earlier tonight in our goal setting, and I just want to reemphasize those, some of the capital improvement projects. I'd like to see a couple of them come to fruition. I know we have some in the planning phase. Hopefully we can see them carried out. My colleague, Mr. Coogan, mentioned Watson. That sounds like a good idea as well. And also some of the recommendations from the Walker Report in order to increase in-district services, like my colleague, Mr. Corey, was just talking about, so we can keep more students in district. So if we have to create more spaces or look at hiring the right specialists, bringing them in district, would help save us money instead of spending it on out-of-district tuition and transportation. It'd be right here in-house, and plus those students at home where they belong. So those would be some of my recommendations. Other than that, I know my colleagues can still talk about it, but I'd like to make a motion to approve your proposed FY20 additional FTA investments with the Chapter 70 funds, as you requested tonight.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second with the question?
Second on the motion. Mr. Aguirre?
So I do think it's important that we have these positions, but I also think it's a valuable exercise to have information before we get to add positions. So related to the issue of what to do with the money in the future, I've stated to the superintendent and to others that the way that we do the budgets, where we have the finance subcommittee sit before the principals, or have the principals come before us, justify kind of what's going on, that puts 3 members of the committee in front of them, and then the other 3 members just come to the meeting, and if we ask our questions that time, it's a different process. So I would like to recommend to the superintendent and the chair that when we look at what we're going to do with the additional money, that we have a committee of the whole as either a budget or finance type committee, and whether it's a work session, so we can ask the questions and have the principals articulate what their real needs are to all of the committee rather than the finance committee, and come with a recommendation. So I would ask that when we decide how to spend the couple $1 million we still have, if that could help. But I do have a couple of questions on this. The first one is the school psychologist. says to meet caseload assessment and counseling demands. Do we know what those caseloads are?
Yeah, our psychologists are assessing, I want to say on average, 125 to 130 students in the testing, and the caseload is supposed to be industry standard at 75 kids. So we're above the industry standard. Putting a psychologist in will greatly help the capacity of those people.
Yep. So that's good information to have. I appreciate that. One thing that I would look at is, and I think this was an issue, and I don't know how you do it in a school, but when we're talking about SEL needs and the needs of the children and the families, I always found that a major issue is a child psychiatrist. Getting the services for kids that actually can get somebody to see these children is a real issue. So I'd like to throw on the list of things to potentially look at is getting a psychiatrist on retainer in the school so that we can actually make sure that these kids get seen as they need.
So it's a great idea. We can look at two options, both as a retainer but also as a district employee.
Yeah, whatever it is, I just think that, in my experience working in a school, it was very difficult to say, you know, to get the kids the services they need, and then that just steamrolls. Obviously, we don't have to go into detail, but we know what happens when the kids can't get the services, you know, of a child psychiatrist. So I would ask that you look at that.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
The other one is the number of students, like the Stone. I know we increased, but do they have, and I might be putting you on the spot, is their enrollment up this year, or is it just as what it was in the prior?
No, the enrollment is up, and it will continue to grow. So the way the Stone works is kids come in and out. Last year, we served 87 students. Right now, we have 67 coming back on the rolls, but those numbers will go up. We'll probably serve over, because remember, we keep adding kids. So we'll probably be up over 90 at some point this year. And you know, the cohort model, it can't be we serve an unending number or limitless number because of we have to add the teacher and the behaviorist for each cohort, but we have room to grow right now, and it always, particularly at the secondary level, those numbers will increase.
And I do think that there's needs there, and the population is very demanding and needy. I would even want to maybe take a look at moving one of the school resource offices over there permanently instead of at the two at the...
So we're working on the SRO assignment now, and have one at RPA and then one at Stone with other buildings. That's what we're working on now.
That makes sense, thank you. The other one is the School Adjustment Counselor, Henry Lord.
Yes.
It just indicated, I think, the needs of, do we know how many students are there?
867, I think, right now. And the Henry Lord's one of the biggest schools in the system outside of Durfee, and will continue to grow as we keep finding space. I mean, it's on the south side of the city that the funnel of the number of students that live over there is expected to maintain. So that need of the additional adjustment counselor gives them equity and parity with Doran and the other middle schools. The K-8 model, this is one thing that people have to realize. It's not the same as having an elementary, and it's not the same as a middle. It's a blend, so the need and the split around the kid services, you can't have one person doing it all.
Yeah, so 860, that's up pretty,
Yeah.
you know. The other thing is that the needs of the students at the school, and never mind K-8, are great there as well. So I do appreciate you getting to the committee the equity chart, for lack of a better way to say it, where we're looking. But when we look at that chart and update it to the 860, we probably should be putting more resources into places with those kind of numbers.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I think what you talked about earlier in terms of us thinking long-term about turnaround and status, you know, how do I plan for the sunset of the grant at Fonseca? But also, there's 5 other schools that are in turnaround with no additional funding because they weren't that low on the percentile chart for the state, but they still have needs. So we've tried the best we can to be able to give those buildings the things that they have, whether it's time or resources. But us studying that and then being much more strategic in next year's budgeting process, I think will be a win for us.
Yep. One of the last questions I have is the interventionist paraprofessional at Henry Lord and Green. Are
Yeah.
those the new positions? Is that what we call the new position that we created that was between a teacher and a para?
No, that's the instructional support liaison at Cuss and Morton.
Can we allow those positions to be that other person? To recruit, potentially
we-
recruit a better person?
We put that on the
Maybe.
table when we were talking about one at Henry Lord, the model that she wanted was the same model for the grade unit, and it's a para-interventionist, and she wanted the symbiotic structure in place. And then the one at Green, the reason why it's not an instructional support liaison, because it's a very specific ESL foundational para. And that was the only reason, because remember, those job descriptions they require a bachelor's degree, and they require someone moving or liking to move into the teacher role. For this one, what we really need, I'm worried about finding a second language speaker if I cap the,
Right, but what I'm looking at is an option. So I think it sounds like you're telling me that you give the principals the option
Yeah.
to do either one. It's
I
not
ask
that
them.
we're boxing them into
Yeah.
one of these.
is that correct?
Well, that's a good thing. My last question is on the attendance officer, the additional attendance officer. I do support attendance officers. I would like to get more information before we go forward filling this position on what the goals are, what they do, obviously, the attendance is not good. So is throwing another attendance officer at it the best way to spend $65,000 or whatever it is? I'd like to get some more info before we hire that second person, relative to, like I said before, if we had the attendance officers before us or whoever's in charge of that at a meeting, they would be able to either justify or tell us what they were going to do and all that stuff. And right now, I don't believe we have that, unless you have the
Well,
answers.
I always have the answers.
Hey.
How dare you ask? No, I think that what I'd like to do, and I couldn't pull it off for this meeting, is we're going to bring forward that first meeting in September, which I believe is September 9th, a recommendation for that attendance officer from the first round that we already approved. At that time, we could have the attendance officers there with Ann Duggan, who's the supervisor, answer any of the questions that the committee has, and also give you some data as to why we think that's important. We wouldn't be able to fill, or we could come forward with the two candidates that night, and in case you think it's a good idea, you appoint the other one that night, too.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally like, they're not going to start the year potentially, so I would like to get more info, or maybe it's a one-page document that they'll send us, saying why we need an additional one. I just think any kind of information, so I think you're in charge of either slowing that process down or not on your own. Just give you I don't want to vote against this package. I do think there's a lot of good things that come up here, so with that, I do think it's great that we have the additional funds. We just need to be thoughtful about what we're going to spend it on, and I think the committee and the superintendent are working together on that. So with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corey.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my colleague's comments here. I think he just brought up a couple of really great points. To follow up on the attendance officers, I was wondering, Mr. Superintendent, along the way, terms of outreach in attendance, seeing that our attendance has been chronically bad in the past, I just wonder what attempts can we make with some of this extra funding to maybe hire a couple of extra outreach workers to seek out the chronic, attendance failures, those students who stay home chronically instead of, being in a classroom, because their failure to attend school affects all of our scores statewide, and we have to be accountable to that. So I want to put it out to the community that really parents have a strong responsibility to send their students to school. So I like the idea of, I've worked with many attendance officers. Their work is very, very important and highly valued. And I just wonder if maybe their work could be supported with outreach workers. And to that point, I yield. However, to another point that my colleague, Mr. Aguiar, brought up, I thought was brilliant, was being able to retain a psychiatrist in our system along the lines of attendance. A lot of kids leave school to go to doctor's appointments and don't return to school. And I know that we're working on that policy right now to reverse it and really mandate that they should have to return back to school so that there's, no loss attendance. By retaining a psychiatrist, it would negate the need for these children to leave the building if a psychiatrist could rove on a caseload basis from school to school and work with the special needs and the school psychologists for the proper assessments necessary for the school adjustment counselors to work with on their caseloads. So I think those are two areas that we should really look at into the future. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Coogan?
I have two things. I thought that the attendance officers did do those home visits and what Tommy was describing.
Yes.
I want
but-
them doing that. I mean, I hope.
Yes, I think Mr. Corey's also referring to the re-engagement specialists at RPA that are out doing the street work and work of getting kids back who are on the verge of dropping out, those things.
And the other point I wanted to make was, we have 26 kids right now on a pre-K waiting list. I know you had that running half-day. I would like to see us accommodate those kids if possible in the next round. I'm not saying on this one, but.
So I'm going to add that to the list, and then we'll have it there September 9th.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
And don't forget, those programs we can open up mid-year, quarter, they can open any time.
As sooner is better.
It's a question of space,
Yeah.
but I'll add that.
Thank you. Mr. Martins?
Unfortunately, I will not support the motion for approving the expenditures as noted by the superintendent here until such time as the superintendent takes into consideration the issues brought up this evening, and then put this off to another meeting. However, right now, Durfee will not improve until the middle schools improve. They, as a school, they're playing catch-up. And the middle schools will not improve until the elementary schools improve. This $1 million should be utilized to provide additional direct into the classroom support of teachers via the additional paraprofessionals, or if possible, to have split classes with additional teachers. With the discussion of poor attendance students, perhaps these poor attendance students would experience, if they experience success in a classroom, they may very well want to come to school. Now, I'll take two schools. Oops, sorry. Watson has 678 students, I believe.
No.
At least that's what the paper says.
No.
No, we have like 278.
Watson? Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. I apologize. Watson, 299 students.
Close.
In there, okay? And as I looked through this, you have 6 paraprofessionals, okay? Assuming that there's about 25 students per classroom, that comes out to 150 students, right? And the enrollment of 299, subtracting that 150 students, the amount of students that are there greatly affect not only those that have some form of para support, but those students that do not have para support greatly influences the MCAS scores. And it behooves to have additional paras in each classroom based on the number of kids that are in that classroom that need to have additional service, additional help. If the classroom has some bright kids, then by all means, push those kids as fast as you can so that they do not lose interest. But for those students that are not understanding of the material and do not have the paraprofessional assistance, then they need help, which means more paraprofessionals in the classrooms there. The Fonseca. The Fonseca, according to this, has 678 students, of which case there is a total of, if I read this information correctly, a total of 15 paras. 4 classes of K, 2 classrooms of pre-K, 8 classrooms with a para, and 1 classroom self-contained with a para. Again, utilizing the assumption of 25 students per class, that comes out to 375 students with an enrollment of 678 students. So that's a difference of 303 students. That number of 303 students not having additional assistance, not only do you have those that are receiving some additional assistance, which I profess that it is not sufficient enough, they may need more than that, more assistance in that classroom, plus those that do not have any paraprofessionals assistance in there, it's going to be impossible. It's going to be difficult to be able to improve the students' learning in there. All of these things that are proposed are good things, absolutely so. But the only thing is, you're limiting what's available or what should be available directly into that classroom, interfacing with the students. Not too long ago, there was a film that was shown here, and I believe it was from Morton, where the film had a teacher and all the kids were in tables around, and the camera was following the teacher, but for that one period, but yet it was not possible, or at least for the period of time of the teacher, or the camera, couldn't get to all of the students in each group. So, maybe they were on task, maybe they were not in there. But they obviously couldn't get to everybody. You get the students in a classroom that want to learn, but they'll only learn if they can understand what it is that they are learning. Or those students that are failing, and it's like, why should I bother going to school? I'm only going to fail anyway. Or and that results in the percentiles that are indicated, which I won't repeat them all. I've got them here. If we do not put additional paraprofessionals trained with all of what was said, if we could get the paraprofessionals to be, for professional development with BCC, fantastic. All of that, again, is good stuff. But it's not getting filtered directly into the help of the classroom. One of the things in here, which I believe Mr. Aguirre indicated, was instructional support liaison at class in Morton. My note here is, what are they going to do? What are they going to do over and above what is already there as far as teacher coaching and whatnot in there in order to improve the students in that particular classroom? Would it be better to have a person in that classroom to be able to sit with the students as the teacher is going on, dealing with the lesson and then dealing with the follow-up for that lesson and going further in there? I cannot support this amount of expenditure for that $1 million. It's not quite, it's 921 million, I'm sorry, $921,700. I cannot support this until the superintendent comes up with consideration of everything that is said here this evening, and I yield.
Thank you. Roll call. I'm calling for the roll. Roll
I have a
call.
question.
Roll call.
I have a question related to this. There's nothing wrong with asking a question. I respectfully disagree that if I want to ask one more question, I have the right to ask that question, Mr. Mayor. So
And the
I'd
chair
like
has
to
the right
please
to-
be allowed
Mr.
to
Aguirre,
ask my question.
You're absolutely right. You do have the right, and the chair has the right to also move the question along. So I'm asking for
Okay,
a roll
well,
call
you don't
this
have that
time.
right, so I doubt the ruling of the chair and ask my colleagues to support me to ask
have
a
the-
very basic
just-
question on spending the money. You can take a roll call on that one.
What is it?
You can take a roll call on me doubting what your ruling is,
Can I ask
so
Mr.
that the rest of the members
What-
can say, yes, Mr.
Well,
Aguirre can ask
the
one
pur-
more
the purpose-
question.
Excuse me, the purpose was to move the question along to make best time, but now we're arguing, which is not going to do any benefit for anyone, because it's just going to waste time.
I'm not
So
trying
if
to
you want to ask your question, go ahead.
Thank you.
But going forward, and I want to make it clear, there will be no argument. If I call for the question to move ahead, it is
If you don't
under
have the
chair's
majority
authority.
vote.
You have the floor.
If you don't have the majority
You have
vote,
the floor to
you're
ask your
ruling that.
question.
So my question, which is, I think, very valid, the 10th grade academy at the high school, we are adding, it says you're going to add an adjustment counselor, and I want to say this is to mimic the 9th grade or something along those lines.
Yes.
Get some clarity on that,
Sure.
what that looks like?
Sure, I'll have Principal Damaris answer your question.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I appeal the decision of the chair. That is in Win Robert's rules. So I appeal the decision of the chair to allow Mr. Aguirre to be able to ask what question that he had.
Mr. Martins, I've already allowed him. The whole purpose was to move this meeting along. We had a lengthy discussion. We're going to get this question answered, and then I am calling for a roll call. I do have the authority to move any question forward, but in the essence of not arguing, which is
I'm not
wasting time
interested
anyway.
in time, whether it's midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't
Mr.
really
Martins.
care about time.
Mr.
I
Aguirre has the
appeal
floor.
the decision of the chair.
What does that mean, Bruce? Appealing the citizens' chair? We're going to move it along, Mr. Martins. I don't know what that means, appealing the decision of the chair. You don't want me to have Mr. Aguirre ask his question?
already asked the question. Matt's here to
Uh,
answer. It's good. You're all set.
He had more than one question.
You still got the floor.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
answer the question. If he has another question, fine.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Damaris.
Thank you. The intent is to mirror what's going on in the Freshman Academy. Schoolworks, which was the agency that conducted a site visit for the turnaround, leading into our turnaround plan, pointed very well to the Freshman Academy as something to build upon and to spread across the school. These were ideas that we already had, but that confirmed it with an outside eye. School in Maine also came in and did a monitoring visit of the Freshman Academy and identified elements of the Freshman Academy that are supporting better results, okay? Knowing the SEL needs of our students and knowing the work that our adjustment counselors do, there's almost a cliff in services when the kids get to sophomore year, where they have 2 adjustment counselors servicing the freshman class, 1 on the other grade levels. So when you look at the data, and we need to provide you with this because it's pretty compelling, of just the number of crisis calls at Durfee High School for students and what that does in terms of putting stress on the caseload of the SACs, they're maxed out. Our adjustment counselors do not stop. A lot of triage, but then with the services that you need to deliver with IEPs, et cetera, we need more. So this is a step towards more. In future budgets, I imagine I'll be looking for ways to shift things around if there's not more money available, to add more SACs. So this is a first step towards that, Mr. Aguirre.
So in the 9th grade, what does it look like for overall people?
So for 9th grade, the structure, outside, for the administrative structure, you got a vice principal, 2 guidance counselors, 2 adjustment counselors, a student support specialist, a behaviorist, and then the clerical staff in the office.
And now with this position, you'll have exactly that same model in 10th grade?
Everything except the behaviorist. So there's a student support specialist, that's a teaching position. The behaviorist is not yet in the sophomore model yet.
And then when they get to junior, it goes off, it lowers to 1?
Right now, yes.
And I hear you saying that you think there might be need for duplicating that model in other grades or throughout the school if it's working.
I see the results. If we look at freshmen, their success rates, they're passing more classes, our dropout rates going down over time. The climate of the school is changing now that we've got students that just graduated that had 4 years of this current model. You know, they came in as freshmen under the current model of the academy, and the impact is evident.
And what does a student support specialist do? They work with the kids individually, like hand in
Student
hand?
support, they do small group, they work with students individually. If there's a trouble spot with a particular classroom that needs an extra adult there to stabilize, they go in, and then they also have 2 classes a day where they're working with, you know, 10, 15 students at a time on study skills, on coping strategies, on focus, on organization.
Thank you. I think it sounds like this is obviously something I support, but as you're speaking and as my mind is working on it, I'm thinking that we should be adding more of those type of positions, because if you have the data that shows it's working, the consultants say it's working, I think we should do more of it. So I'm certainly going to support it, and I would support future and more in the future.
Thank you.
With that, I yield.
Mr.
Can
Superintendent?
can I add that to the list?
If you'd like, I would be happy to.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
No.
Mayor Correa?
Abstain. Next item. Next item for discussion is discuss and vote to approve amended school year 2019 to 2020 district handbook. Questions? Mr. Exler?
I'm just going to make a motion to approve the amended school year 2019-2020 district handbook.
Second.
Seconded. Is there a question on the motion? Mr. Corey?
I just wanted to add my 2 cents before we go ahead and move this. Again, I think the handbook is really important. I wanted to speak again publicly to the importance of attendance as we embark on a new school year. And just want to take a moment to use this bully pulpit to speak out to the community at large. How important it is for parents to value their child's education and to get those kids into school 5 days a week throughout the entire school year. And some of the ideas recommended here, regular bedtime and morning routines are excellent habits to try to work toward. And it really helps us to build up our scores and our accountability school-wise. We can do our job, but we need the parents providing their own children to go to school 5 days a week. So I make a personal appeal to the parents in our community to send your child to school. On the empty chair document, Mr. Superintendent, on the attendance policies, there's a contract here. Is that a mandatory or a voluntary contract?
We can't mandate that it's a contract that, if you don't sign it, I can't do anything to you, so it's voluntary.
Yeah. And I just wanted to be able to stipulate that. So ultimately, it's
like the honor code.
Yeah, it's the honor code for sure. And so again, that speaks to my appeal to the families in Fall River to send their children to school on a regular basis. It would help you. It's a win-win for families. It's a win-win for the school teachers system-wide who are working so hard to maintain progress in their classrooms. And there's nothing worse than for a teacher to have to backlog their students' caseload when kids are out, 25% of the year. It's very, very difficult to maintain our standards and our excellence when that's happening. And to my next point, I wanted to say, yes, in regard to the code of conduct. I'm really pleased with the way the code of conduct was followed last year, and I think that we should maintain a very firm code of conduct in our schools. And with that being said, I'm also totally in favor of restorative approaches and restorative practices. And I'm very pleased with the growth of SEL, social emotional learning, and social emotional supports that are going on, and the expansion of adjustment counselors, and that we have a dedicated assistant superintendent overseeing these needs, and the growth of this development. I think restorative approaches are incredibly important. I worked directly with restorative approaches in my tenure in the schools, and it works. When you win a kid over, a kid will deliver. When you teach a kid responsibility, responsibility will be followed through in most cases. And those are all win-wins for us. So just wanted to support that again. With that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aguirre?
So this is kind of a technical question, but in the policy on attendance, it indicates that students not in the elementary school are not in their school at the start of the school day, are considered tardy. 5 tardies will be considered an unexcused absence. Does that doesn't get reported to DESE as such, does it? Like, are we increasing our?
No, but we monitor that. So when we look at cases of kids, we can look at exactly how many kids or exactly how many tardies a student has, especially if they're out of the district, and we send them to the meeting to talk about, you have X amount of tardies and you're going to school over here, this school's closer to your home, will that help you? So we use that data.
But it's not the one that gets reported for
No,
chronically absent
no.
students to sort of make ourselves look worse?
No, so absences are absences, but tardies in the state's counting don't record, correct me if I'm wrong, as those absences.
Right, it stuck out with that to me. The other thing is, I do recall, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, asking that we have a policy subcommittee meeting to go over the attendance policy and the code of conduct.
Yes, what we were planning to do, Mr. Aguirre, is get that subcommittee going to look at this, but also then ask for a subcommittee of that subcommittee. So members of my team and perhaps a member or two of the policy committee, we want to do a deeper dive in the overall handbook overall, and there may be some other things we want to add, but it's going to take us some time. So we're going to get that off the ground and shortly.
That makes sense. And the only other question I had is, it looks like we had approved that, I don't know if it's called a D4 or D5 at the high school, but this doesn't indicate that, so we're voting on this. I would assume that we're going to put the new policy in.
Yes,
Not
so
what we're
that
approving
what
today.
we voted on at the high school, and remember, the high school has their own individual handbook.
But it'll get
Yes.
dumped in here. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Martins?
I've gone through the handbook and the cover letter. I object to paragraph 3 of the removal, even though it's recommended by Attorney Joyce. I find that this is the voters elected the school committee to represent them. In a grievance procedure, there are steps in which an employee can address or seek redress, going all the way up to the school committee, and then even going beyond that to arbitration. Or, however, I can only support this if that paragraph 3 is removed, and I recommend that paragraph 3 do be removed, because this is the last step of justice, just like the Supreme Court. I yield, and I make that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second? Can't win them all.
I saw Mr. Coogan nodding his head, and I don't know if that was a signal to others, but nevertheless.
I got bit by a bug.
All right, okay, very good, thank you.
You yield, Mr. Martins? Okay, was there already a motion on this? Yes, there was. Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
No.
Mayor Correa?
Yes. The last item for discussion tonight is summer update on the FY20 budget presented by Mr. Almeida.
Good evening. So just a quick update. Last Monday, the City Council voted to, they appropriated $1 million from health insurance savings this past year. We'll be coming forward to you in September with possible recommendations. In addition, we have $983,000 in Puerto Rico funds that will have to be spent this year. We'll be coming forward with that information as well, hopefully in the October timeframe. And finally, the end of the year report will, we got notification today that the end of the year report's available, and I'll be working on the end of the year report shortly, hopefully to have it submitted by October 1st, which is the deadline, so just an update.
Thank you. Mr. Aguirre.
Just as far as the 2020 update, what I would like to request I know school's starting and it's, things are still changing, but I would like to request that you send to the committee the actual salaries of each employee. Where we get the, in the budget, it was 87 as the average.
Yep.
If, once you can, in October or whenever, if you send us the ones that, when they become actuals, I always like to look back to that to see where we're at with that funding.
We'll send that in one of the Friday emails as soon as we're able to.
Yeah, whenever, it's not for, I'm not trying to put pressure on you this week. I know you got other things going on. The other thing would be to articulate in a memo as well what you had mentioned about the available monies from various sites and carryovers and all that stuff. So if we could get a memo at some point on all of those, just so we know what we're dealing with.
I'm going to put that in Friday. That's definite in Friday's email.
Great. Thank you. I yield.
Kevin?
Thank you.
Got it?
May I just add one thing?
Yeah.
I want to be clear that we're talking the health insurance, Puerto Rico, and tentative transportation.
Yeah, and anything else that, through the budget process, that was a change. I think you know the tenor of the question.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Almeida.
Thank you.
Any new business? Mr. Aguirre?
So I heard today for the first time, I know it's not on the agenda, but I heard the superintendent say in an earlier comment at today's meeting, which was not necessarily known 48 hours prior to today, that there is a candidate, the screening committee for the attendance officer that's advertised actually came up with a name that would be coming to us in future meetings. That's what I heard today for the first time. Knowing that the start of school is next week, I do think that under the fact that we did not understand that that was the case, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the #1 candidate of the screening committee so that we can actually authorize the superintendent to create this hire immediately, work on the paperwork, and get that person working on our attendance as soon as possible. So I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second? Second. Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan? Yes. Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Abstain. Any other new business? Okay. There are a number of items for executive session this evening. I'm going to ask Attorney Assad to review those items and then request a roll call vote to enter executive session.
So moved.
Motion has been made to enter executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes, and Attorney Assad, can you please read the items for those watching at home?
First, read Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A7, to review and approve executive session committee minutes for the July 29, 2019 regular meeting of the Fall River School Committee. Also, Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and/or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, including Ann Doggan, Assistant Superintendent of Social Emotional Learning, Health and Wellness, and Student Support, Michael Loesch, Assistant Superintendent of Special Education Services, Jasmine Baez, Parent Community Worker, Erica Fernandez, Instructional Support Liaison, Kristen Gorvin, Assistant Athletic Director, Dawn Rio Carrere, Instructional Support Liaison. We will reconvene. There may or may not be statements at that time.
The school committee will come back to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Aguirre?
Here.
Mr. Coogan?
Here.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Here.
Mr. Corey?
Here.
Mr. Martins? Here. Mayor Correa?
Here. Just one last thing. We do have a number of FYIs. If we just have a motion to put those on file.
So moved.
Motion's been made, seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes. Any motions from executive session?
Mr. Chair, I have a motion to approve the executive session committee meeting minutes for July 29, 2019.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes. Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract between the Fall River Public Schools and Ann Doggan, Assistant Superintendent of Social Emotional Learning, Health and Wellness, and Student Support, as negotiated.
Second.
Seconded. Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract between the Fall River Public Schools and Michael Loesch, Assistant Superintendent of Special Education Services, as negotiated.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the contract between the Fall River Public Schools and Jasmine Bees, Parent Community Worker,
Second.
as negotiated.
Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract between the Fall River Public Schools and Erica Fernandez, Instructional Support Liaison, as negotiated.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract between the Fall River Public Schools and Kristen Gorvin, Assistant Athletic Director, as negotiated.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Abstain.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract between the Fall River Public Schools and Dawn Rio Carrere, Instructional Support Liaison, as negotiated.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Mr. Coogan?
Yes.
Mr. Costa? Mr. Hetzler?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yep.
Mr. Martins? Mayor Correa?
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.